The actual defining moment happened is when I met Prime Minister Modi and he actually tweeted about my music. That is what gave me recognition, even more than the Grammy Award. So Stuart Copeland, I grew up listening to his music. He's been a huge influence on my music itself. Yeah, he became pretty much like a father figure to me, another father figure to me. But of course, he would say older brother. I believe that if God exists and if God has got a voice, then his voice would be like Ustad Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. That's how powerful it is.
Hi, I'm Neha of the New Indian Express. My guest today is a 3-time Grammy Award winner and has just been nominated for a 4th time for the coveted honor. He's a self-taught musician who has pushed the boundaries to emerge as not only a world-renowned composer but also a strong advocate of environment, mental health issues and anti-piracy. Join me as we speak to the very talented Ricky Kej on his amazing journey, who chose music over a career in medicine and made a mark for himself on the world stage. Hi Ricky, thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's an honor.
Honor's all mine.
So you've been nominated for the 4th Grammy Award. How does it feel and what's behind this?
Of course, it feels absolutely amazing. A lot of people ask me that, being nominated a 4th time and I've already won 3 times, does the excitement level come down with each time? Yeah. But absolutely not, because with every passing year, I believe that, I'm growing as a musician. Yeah. I'm growing better and better. At least I hope that I'm growing better and better, collaborating with various musicians, learning from them. And also, all of my music is about a cause. It could be an environmental cause or a social cause, or in this case, about mental wellness.
Yes.
So I believe that I'm learning more and more about these causes. I'm growing as a human being and as a musician. So this album, I believe, is my best work ever.
Really?
And I believe that it's at least my favorite piece of work that I've ever done. So to get validation for that, it feels absolutely amazing. So the excitement level does not come down. It always keeps going up constantly.
Why do you say it's your best album? What is so special about this?
So a few years ago, this was, I think, about 4 or 5 years ago, I was exposed to this ancient Indian philosophy, which said that, the imbalances of the environment are in direct relation to the imbalances of the mind. So in order to purify the environment, we first have to purify the mind. And I've been a lifelong environmentalist.
Yes.
And I started to realize that, the way that we are providing solutions to environmental issues is basically very symptomatic and very much on the surface.
Absolutely.
If we want to go to the root of the problem and we want to have a long-lasting solution, then the only way to actually do that is through creating a more compassionate society. And the only way to create a more compassionate society is basically through mental wellness.
Yes.
So that started a new journey of mine. And then I started creating, pieces of music in my mind for many, many years, which sort of suited this purpose. And very quickly I realized that this can be possible through Indian-rooted wellness music, basically music through rags.
Okay.
So I chose 9 Indian classical rags. And I created one song on each of those 9 Indian classical rags. So that's why Break of Dawn has got 9 songs.
Yeah.
And that became the album.
So you're the youngest Grammy Award from India,
Correct.
Right? How does that feel? After, I think, legends like Ravi Shankar and Zakir Hussain. So, you're like the pride of Karnataka. So
no, of course, I'm really flattered and it feels absolutely amazing because, of course, I've never imagined that I could be the youngest Grammy Award winner. Growing up in India, making independent music, which is outside of the mainstream music, the Grammys always felt like an unattainable dream. It was not even something that you could dream about. It was not even something that you could even think that, something in that direction could be possible. We would just watch the Grammys on television and that was the end of it. And then when I was 33 years old, I won the Grammy and it felt absolutely amazing. And also, there's a huge significance with the age 33.
Yeah.
I realized, because Lord Krishna became the king of Dwarka at the age of 33. Jesus Christ was crucified and he became Jesus Christ at the age of 33. Superman became Superman when he was 33.
Wow.
But of course, that was, I think, copied from Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
But he became Superman when he's 33. It said that Gautam Buddha got his enlightenment when he was 33 years old.
So
and I won my first Grammy Award when I was 33.
That's a lot of spiritual coincidences, right?
A lot of coincidences,
Yeah.
yeah. So 33 is a really very important age.
Amazing. other albums, Grace, Divine Tides, Shanti Samsara. What were your thoughts behind them? And when you compose music, what is it? Is it title, melody, or lyrics? What is it that comes to your mind first?
So first, it is a thought that comes to my mind.
Okay.
A thought that what is it that I want to communicate? Like, for example, I go into a forest and I feel that the forest is really beautiful and I want to communicate that. Then that becomes a song.
Okay.
Or if I feel strongly about human and elephant conflict and I want to communicate that to my audiences, then that becomes a song.
Okay.
Or if I want to communicate mental wellness, then that becomes a song.
Okay.
So my first album, Winds of Samsara, not my first album, rather the first album that won me my Grammy Award, because that was actually my 16th album.
Okay.
So Winds of Samsara was created because I wanted to collaborate with this amazing South African flute player, a guy called Wouter Kellerman. And I loved his music and he liked my music. So we met in Los Angeles and we were discussing as to how do we collaborate with each other. And then there was these huge coincidences that happened. One being that I had just finished making a piece of music. It was sort of incomplete, but I was working towards completion on making a piece of music, which was about our father of the nation, that is Mahatma Gandhi.
Yeah, I saw that.
And he had just finished making a piece of music on his father of the nation, that is Nelson Mandela.
Okay.
And we also realized there's a whole lot of cross-pollination here because, as we all know, Mahatma Gandhi spent his formative years in South Africa, so he had a lot of South Africanness in him.
Yeah.
And Nelson Mandela was heavily inspired by the non-violence movement by Mahatma Gandhi, so he had a lot of Indianness in him. So we decided, okay, this is how we're going to work. I'll send you my Indian music, you add South Africanness to it. You send me your South African music, I'll add Indianness to it. Spent 2 years, became very close friends.
Okay.
At the end of 2 years, we had an album ready, and that became Winds of Samsara. It was the highest selling instrumental album in the world for 2014.
Yeah.
Won numerous awards, and that ended up winning our first Grammy Award.
And were you surprised that when it showed up on the Billboard as #1 album? Were you surprised?
It was quite amazing. But of course, we had an inkling because what happens is that there's a pre-sale period before the album goes on sale, which is usually about 20 or 30 days. I've forgotten how many days it was for us. But during that time, there was immense response. And of course, Amazon contacted us and said that, we need more physical copies to be sent to the store. Barnes and Nobles got in touch with us and said that, okay, we're running out. You have to send us more physical copies. And then we started realizing, oh, this is selling really well and it's doing fantastically well. So we had an inkling that, that it is definitely going to go into the top 10.
Okay.
But we never imagined that it will be at #1.
That's awesome. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And also I want to ask you is that why the flute is so significant in all of your album because of your interaction with the...
No, I guess flute has always been a very important part of my musical journey.
And why?
Simply because I like music that is very expressive, especially when it is instrumental music.
Yeah.
So I believe that nothing can possibly be more expressive than the human voice.
Yeah.
And leaving aside lyrics, if you have an alap or you have a human voice doing sargams or scat voices, we instantly connect with the human voice because it is so expressive. Yeah. It is so beautiful as a musical instrument. And I believe that the instrument that comes closest to the human voice is basically the bansuri. Now, I'm not saying the metal Western flute. I'm saying purely the Indian bansuri. Because the Indian bansuri can glide from note to note. It can bring in these microtones. And also, more importantly, the bansuri, as opposed to any other instrument, before the instrument starts playing, there is always a breath sound.
Yeah.
So that breath sound almost mimics a person who's singing, because you're taking a deep breath and then you're starting to play that particular phrase. So that itself brings in beautiful expression into a flute. And that's the reason why every single album of mine always features the flute very prominently. Even if it is a vocal album, always the flute is a very important part of it.
I've noticed that. So you're also part of a very progressive band called Angel Dust.
Yes.
And you must have experimented a lot in that genre. So how did that help you become a musician?
So in the year 1999, when I was in college, I was in my first year of my degree of my college. And that time I saw an ad out there for a band. It was a progressive rock band, sort of like very heavy, almost veering towards heavy metal. But let's put it this way, a progressive rock band is basically a heavy metal band with very complicated music, okay? So that is how it is. So I saw this ad for where they required a singer and a keyboard player, and they wanted the singer and keyboard player to be the same person.
Okay.
Now, I'm a terrible singer. I just can't sing at all. But even then, I thought, let me audition for it. And of course, I was very young at that time. I was about 18 years old. And, and I thought that, okay, maybe I can get through that audition. Maybe I can become a singer. So I went, I played the keyboards for them. I sang for them. They hated my voice. But they liked my keyboard playing. And they already had a singer and they wanted an additional singer. So then they decided, all right, let's just stick with our singer.
Yeah.
Why don't you come into the band and you play keyboards? And I was extremely grateful to the band that this was my first big opportunity to be part of a rock band.
Yeah.
And of course, the teamwork, the camaraderie, the traveling together. My parents are extremely protective parents. Marwadi, Punjabi parents, very, very protective parents. So right up until Angel Dust, I'd never traveled outside of Bangalore without them.
Okay.
The only way I traveled outside of Bangalore is when I was accompanied by any one of my parents.
Okay.
And here I had to go for, concerts and shows and all of that stuff. So the first time ever that I traveled outside of Bangalore was with Angel Dust. I took a train ride to the horror of my parents, because my parents were like, no, you can't go in a train. You have to go in a plane or whatever. But then I said that the band is traveling by train, so I'll go in a train. So I went to the train, and it was one of the best experiences ever of my life.
Unforgettable.
Hanging around with them and spending 24 hours in a train, and and it was extremely cold at certain points of time, and standing by the door, all of that stuff. So it was easily one of the best experiences of my life. So being part of that band, I felt made me grow by leaps and bounds. As a human being and also as a musician, and I'm very grateful that I got to spend those 2 years with the band.
So would you also like to talk about the people who paved the way for how your career unfolded just now?
There are a lot of people who paved the way. Like, for example...
Any special mention?
No, like, for example, if you look at my parents, okay?
Yeah.
My parents were not at all supportive of
Yeah.
my musical career. They hated it. In fact, my dad wanted me to do a degree in dental surgery. And I had to make a deal with him that I would finish off this degree, and only then, my life would become my own. And so I had to go to 5 years of college. Of course, my musical career had already started, with the band Angel Dust and all of that stuff in the evenings. Then I got my degree, gave the certificate to my father, and I became a full-time musician after that. And he also knew that I'll be successful by then, because I'd already seen some success. But nevertheless, the thing about my parents, why I appreciate them, is that they had the gift of being well off. And it's not like I took any money from them. I never took any money from them. So I'm completely self-made in that way. But at the same time, I could take certain risks that other people could not take. I could take risks of not taking up certain jobs because I would feel that my career will go in the wrong direction, or getting into Bollywood, or getting into commercial music. I only wanted to make a specific kind of music, and I could stick to that simply because I knew that if I fail, or if I do not have any money, worst situation, I go crying to my parents and ask them for money, and they will never refuse, and there will always be food on the table. There will always be a roof over my head. So that is where I absolutely, I'm grateful to them that I was born into that family where I could take these risks, because they could protect me if I did not do well. Luckily, I did well, but nevertheless, that thing was there. And of course, the other person who I would like to acknowledge is a person called Rod Lynham. Rod Lynham, former vice president of Universal Music in USA, a very great gentleman. And in 1999-2000, when I was starting off my career in my first year of dentistry, that time I'd made an album. And that album was released just in India, in a few stores in India. At that time, there were CDs and cassettes. So it was released CDs and cassettes in a few stores in India. And then a friend of mine knew about this yoga store in New York, and said that they don't sell music over here. They don't sell CDs. They sell yoga mats and incense sticks and all of that stuff. But why don't you send your music? Because your music will work really well for this, and they'll sell it. So I put together some money, sent a FedEx to USA with 10 CDs. And 6 months later, I get a call from this gentleman from Los Angeles. And he says, is this Ricky? Then I said, yeah. Then he's like, about 6 months ago, I bought this CD from this yoga store in New York. And for the last 6 months, I've been listening to your album in my car. And I absolutely love it. And he said that, do you have a record deal with anybody? I said, no, I don't have a record deal. Then he's like, well, you're about to sign one. And then he sent me a contract, and I ended up doing 10 albums with him. And of course, he's now like a father figure to me. Okay. When I go to Los Angeles, I many times stay at his house, and And he during the first few times that I went to Los Angeles, he would take me around everywhere to all the sites and all the museums and things like that. Then when I left working with major labels and I became an independent artist on my 14th album, he helped me set up my own label in America. He helped me set up my distribution. So he's been a very important part of my career.
Yeah. So they say that you actually need just one person who believes in you, and then, So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And I've had a few of those, yeah.
Amazing. So do you also play any other instruments besides the keyboard?
Keyboard is my main instrument, but I also play a little bit of other instruments, a little bit of the guitar, a little bit of the flute, and a little bit of percussion instruments and things like that.
Okay.
But only enough to save my life. But keyboards is my main instrument, and I use a lot of technology. So that's my main instrument.
Okay. And do you miss making jingles?
So jingles actually was a great, a great phase in my life.
Yeah.
I was doing jingles for about 13 or 14 years. And in that 13 or 14 years, I did more than 3,500 of them. So it was quite a cool phase because working on jingles is very different from what I'm doing right now, because you have to work based on a brief.
Yeah.
And let's assume that I make a piece of music for, let's say, a beer, let's say Heineken.
Mm-hmm.
I make a brilliant piece of music for Heineken. And Heineken absolutely loves it, and it's a huge hit for them and all of that stuff. I cannot use that same piece of music to advertise Indian Express.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's a completely different brand.
Mm-hmm.
So then you have to start realizing that it's not about the quality of music that you're providing. Of course, it has to do some with quality,
subject.
But it's about whether your music is correct or wrong.
Yeah.
And you have to crack what the brand is about, and you have to create music based on that.
Yeah.
So, and every day was a different challenge. Like, for example, yesterday I would have done, let's say, a Tamil folk jingle. Today I would do a Celtic jingle. Tomorrow I would do a hip hop jingle. So you have to be on your toes with every single style of music, because you're given a brief and you have to deliver within one day, sometimes in half a day. So you have to be really good with that. You have to know all the musicians who can perform, these particular genres of music. Like if it's a rock jingle, you have to immediately know, okay, this person's going to play bass, this person's going to play guitar, this person's going to play drums. If it's a Celtic jingle, you have to immediately know this person's going to play the fiddle, this person's going to play, conduct the orchestra, and this vocalist is going to sing. So you have to know all of that. And I believe that doing that for 13 years and doing more than 3,500 of them, all of those genres have crept into my music.
Yeah.
So that is why my music is so eclectic.
Yeah.
Because for me, I'm not trying to make a good rock song or a good pop song or a good new age song or a good fusion song. I'm just trying to make a good song, a good piece of music. And whatever instrument gets into it, it gets into it.
Yeah.
Whatever style gets into it, it gets into it. And I've always believed that music should not be defined by genres. And that's happening right now. People are realizing that. Music should be defined by the emotion that the music gives you. Like music for joy. It could be a rock song, it could be a pop song that gives you joy, it could be a Hindustani classical song, it could be an African folk song, it could even be a heavy metal song. Like any of this gives you joy, So basically every single emotion cuts through genres and it gives you joy.
Yeah.
So I believe that music should actually start being defined by the end result that it gives you, the emotion that it gives you.
Also, you grew up with ADHD?
Yeah.
Is that why you are such a strong advocate of mental health?
No, I guess both of them go hand in hand.
Yeah.
But as you notice, I talk very fast. I'm very fidgety when I talk, and my brain works at a at a super speed. So even as a child, it was like that. And and I had a lot of trouble in school where especially with spelling. When my classroom notebooks and all of that stuff used to come back to me with red circles, like maybe 4 or 5 red circles on every sentence, and I used to have a lot of difficulty reading. So I had all these coping mechanisms that I would have for reading textbooks and things like that. Especially when the teacher would tell me that, okay, stand and read this passage, because they would alternatively give opportunities to every student to read aloud. And I used to read completely different words for various sentences. Then I started realizing that the way to do it is that, secretly, even though I would not know if the teacher would ask me to read that particular day, I would still, go through the textbook myself once. And then I had these different marker pens of different colors.
Okay.
So I would color every single line in a different color so that, so that my eyes would move to the right word at the right time and things like that. Because even now I have that problem when I'm reading a book. I read about 2 or 3 sentences. Then when I move to the next set of sentences and I go back to the first set of sentences, it's almost like it is a completely different word, and I'm like, I just read this, and how did it change? How did it magically, the words and the sentences change? So after I finished my dentistry, when I was, I think, about 23 or 24, that is when I swore I'm never going to read a book again in my life.
Okay.
So after that, I've not. So it's been 20 years. I've not read a single book in my life, and I'm extremely happy about that.
Okay.
So a lot of friends of mine are novelists and and writers and all of that stuff, and they keep sending me their books, and I tell them that if there are no pictures, I'm not reading it. So, which book have you read? I'm like, Archie's Double Digest. And that's the reason why, even with the education system that we have today, I'm constantly advocating for, textbooks should look more like comic books.
Yeah.
Because then your textbooks are more inclusive,
Yeah.
To more neurodivergent kids.
Yeah.
And right now, the number of neurodivergent kids is increasing
Yeah.
crazily high. So many of my friends, of course, I don't have children. So many of my friends who are my age,
Yeah.
I've got children who are, 10 years, 15 years old. And, when I meet them, I can immediately see myself in them, just having a short conversation with them. I know that, that they are definitely on the spectrum.
Yes.
Because they have the exact same problem as I used to have.
Yeah.
And I sometimes talk to their parents. And parents are like, no, nothing like that, And then I explain to them that once you realize
Yeah.
that your child is neurodivergent,
Yeah.
you will love them far more.
Yeah.
And plus, you will make their lives much better because you'll
Easier.
showcase that much more empathy towards them.
Yeah.
And the other thing, going a little forward, is that what I used to hate in my childhood was that how films used to portray children with ADHD and autism spectrum.
Yeah.
That they are some kind of geniuses. That even now, whenever anybody is on the spectrum, they say that, oh, but you must be a genius at something. Or people tell me that, that's why you're such a great musician. And I say, no, that every child is completely different. And, not every child who is on the spectrum turns out to be a genius. And,
How you use it as a strength, I think.
Exactly. And sometimes they would not, they'll never be able to, their entire lives, they will not be able to find out what it is that makes them a genius.
Yeah.
So parents should not be putting this undue pressure. Like, for example, in Tare Zameen Par,
Yeah.
the child wins the art competition in the end. Or Forrest Gump, the guy becomes one of the greatest athletes ever. And then you look at Rain Man, he's like really good with multiplication and, and mathematics. You look at Hangover, the comedian, he's very good at blackjack and he's very good at counting cards. I think, people should stop that,
Yeah.
that because then you're giving undue pressure on parents and children
Yeah.
by showing that everybody who is on the spectrum or anybody who is neurodivergent has got some kind of geniusness in them.
No, but you have even real life example as Elon Musk also.
Yeah.
He's on the spectrum and he's doing so well for himself. But I want to ask you something. It's very inspiring how you've achieved so much in
But
life.
not every neurodivergent person is an Elon Musk. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree on that.
correct.
But I want to ask you that, ADHD is to do with attention disorder, right? But you've been so focused on your work and how, it's about environment and about a cause and about, a meaningful purpose. So can you explain the contrast?
So I guess it was me coping up with it because I've got a very short attention span, like a really, really short
Yes.
one. So when I'm working on a piece of music, I started realizing that if I work on one piece of music, I'm never going to be able to complete it ever. So the way to do it is that you have to work on multiple things. So at any given point of time, I'm working on 10 or 11 things. And I'm quickly switching between different pieces of music
Okay.
or sending an email to somebody or writing something,
Yeah.
So I'm constantly working on multiple things and that's how I keep my attention alive. Also, I've got some really good people in my team. Like, for example, my engineer, programmer, producer, a guy called Vanil Vegas. He's been working with me for about 18 years. So we've got a very close relationship that way. And the thing is that he's a person who's extremely focused.
Okay.
So if I am working on something and then I tell him, okay, work a little bit further on that, I know that he can take it from this point to this point effortlessly because he can focus on it for multiple hours and sometimes multiple days and he can get things done. So that way, having a good team helps a lot.
Yeah.
And then even my chief of operations, a person called Nishant, extremely focused guy. Like if I tell him that, we need to write this proposal, and this proposal, it would take me like a couple of days to write because I would work on it maybe 15 minutes per day. He can sit down for about 8 hours or 9 hours continuously and he can get it done. And he can constantly take inputs from me.
Yeah.
So it's my vision, but at the same time,
have
he's
support group.
he's fulfilling it, and that way. So you have to have a good team around you to actually achieve what you need to achieve.
So how do you describe your genre of music? What about it makes it so captivating for such a large, diverse group of people?
So I guess no, there are always two ways to go about making music. One is the mainstream music,
Yeah.
like the Taylor Swifts and the Beyoncés or Bollywood or
Mhm.
whatever, where what you do is that you look at current trends, and or you look at a brief from a director or a producer, and you try to create a piece of music that will captivate a huge audience across demographics, and and across age groups, across language barriers, and all of that stuff. So you're reaching out to millions and millions of people. Now, the second kind of music is the niche genres like jazz and
Yeah.
and country and what do you call it, big band, and and Indian classical music and fusion and all of that stuff. So in this kind of music, these styles of music, one has to create music that the musician itself likes. So I have to create music that I myself love.
Mm.
Okay, without any external influence. Whatever I love listening to, I create that piece of music. I create a piece of music that I absolutely fall in love with,
Yeah.
and then it is a struggle to find audiences that like it. So that's the way it is. So that is how my music has always been. It's been uncompromised music, which I myself absolutely love. Each and every piece of music is a piece of me, and it defines me as a person. And then once I finish off making the music, that is when the marketing starts.
Okay.
And I spend a lot of time on marketing my music.
Okay.
So once I finish off an album, like I finished off Break of Dawn, I won't be working on a new project for a very long time.
Okay.
I mean, I'll be working on small pieces of music and things like that, but I won't work on a major piece of music for a long time,
Okay.
so that I can give enough time for this album
New
to breathe.
inspiration, yeah.
And because I've worked so hard on the album, so it's very important that I get as many people to listen to it. So then I spend maybe about a year, sometimes even 2 years, trying to get as many people to listen to the album as possible, trying to find audiences that appreciate this music. And once I feel that it has its desired impact when it comes to the music and when it comes to the message that the music wants to convey, that is when I will probably move on to the next album.
Okay.
And it's the same with any other art form. Like if you look at a person like Vincent van Gogh, one of the greatest contemporary artists, if he was making a new piece of art, I cannot even imagine him going to all the neighboring art galleries and saying, what is everybody doing? Let me do something similar and all of that. So what color is in fashion nowadays? So he wouldn't do that. He would dig deep into his own soul and he would create a piece of art.
Yeah.
And if I wanted to know what kind of a person Vincent van Gogh was, I will probably, obviously I won't read a book about him because of the reasons I told you, but I don't think anybody will read a book about him. They will probably look at his art and they will define what kind of a person he is. But the problem with mainstream music in India, and this is a problem only in India, is that everything is film focused, and every single song that comes out of the movie industry is either a love song or an item song.
Yeah.
So you cannot define musicians by their music in India. Like for example, you look at a person like Vishal Dadlani, very good friend of mine. I think he's a great guy and heavily into gender equality, heavily into social justice. Written many songs about social justice through
But
his
we don't
band
see that,
Pentagram.
yeah.
But you don't see that.
Yeah.
But the only thing you define him by is
Yeah.
Sheila Ki Jawani,
Yeah.
Bang Bang, what do you call that? The songs from Fighter, the songs from Jawan. These are the songs.
Yes,
Sorry,
I-
not Jawan. Sorry, it is Pathan. Sorry. So you will define him by all of that music. Same thing with so many other composers. Like when you look at any of the famous Bollywood composers. Whereas if you look at the West, you have a person like Adele. You listen to her music. Whether she's written the song or not, the song defines her as a person. You know what kind of a person Adele is in real life while you listen to her songs. It's the same with a person like Britney Spears or a person like Michael Jackson or a person like Sam Smith. Anybody, you listen to their music, or Madonna, you listen to any song of Madonna, you'll know this is how she is as a person. So I'm hoping that starts happening more and more in India,
Yeah.
where musicians' art starts defining them as a personality.
Yeah. So how do you define yourself through this music? What
So
would
for
you
me,
say?
it keeps changing. So I guess if you listen to my music that I created in 2008, that's how I was as a person. If you listen to my music in 2012, that's how I was as a person. So I guess if I have to define myself right now, I'm a person who feels very strongly about certain things, especially about the environment. So environment has always remained my steadfast focus, because these are things that really bother me: climate change, air pollution,
Yeah.
plastics pollution, species extinction, deforestation, coexistence with species. These are things that really bother me. And traveling the length and breadth of India and traveling around India, especially in rural areas, I started realizing that if you look at a country like India or any country in the global south, in my mind, you can only classify everything into two major buckets. One is problems of survival, and the second is problems of thriving. So in a developed nation, people can bother about climate change and things like that simply because the problems of survival have been taken care of. Everybody can flick a switch and a light turns on. Everybody's got a roof over their head. Everybody has got some way to get some food. Whereas in a country in the global south, you first have to solve the problems of survival, and only then will anybody give a damn about the environment and climate change and things like that. So you have to first focus on poverty, on hunger, on malnutrition, on education, on sanitation, on water, on gender inequality, gender violence, innovation, homes. All of these things need to be taken care of. And only then anybody will care about that. Because there are so many narratives in the West that, consume less of everything. You cannot say that in a place which is completely steeped in poverty. You cannot say that...
and high in population also.
Exactly. And you cannot say stuff like, let's make a better world for our future generations. They'll be like, what about our generation? You cannot skip us. So that is when I started getting very realistic about the problems of the environment. Because previously I was like a Greta Thunberg kind of a person, that stop everything, stop this is evil, that is evil. And then slowly I started getting a lot of empathy, and I started understanding, that one has to have a very holistic approach towards problem solving. One cannot have an all or nothing approach. And then that is when I changed my mind, and I started focusing on a whole lot of things about children's rights, refugee rights, on health, on sanitation, on all of these things. And then that is when I realized that, okay, now I'm tackling the environment in a right way, so that is my journey about music, and that's my journey as a human being.
So when you say children's right, what do you mean by that? As in, is it in India or generally over the...
So I work a lot with UNICEF, UNICEF particularly in India. So that's my main focus point when it comes to children. So UNICEF has got a very beautiful, motto that we take care of children and we protect children's rights even before they're born, right up through their childhood. And even after they become an adult, we don't give up on them. So it's about everything, because at the end of the day, children need the best possible opportunity to grow. They need to be put into a conducive environment to grow. You need to ensure that they're not, they're not exposed to whatever, which decreases their cognitive abilities, which decreases their ability to learn, which decreases their ability to shine and to prosper. It could be anything. It could be pollution. It could be problems of pollution. It could be problems of misinformation, of education, of not being in a loving family. It could be child marriage. It could be anything. But we should ensure that every single child has got the complete and absolute opportunity to fulfill their potential and shine as bright as possible. So that is what I try to help UNICEF with. And also I've started an education program with UNICEF, which is called My Earth Songs. So what I've done is that I've written these 30 songs, which are based on the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. So every song is about a certain issue of sustainability. Like we've got a song which is about the danger of single-use plastics. It's called Plastic War. We've got a song which is teaching children what a carbon footprint is. A song which teaches children about the rhinoceros and the importance of it. Another one about the elephant, about teaching children how important innovation is. So what we've done is that we've taken these songs. All these songs are extremely positive. There's no doom and gloom or anything. Like, for example, the song on carbon footprint, the chorus goes like, I'm going to leave a mark on this earth, but it's not going to be a carbon footprint, So that's the idea. And so these songs through textbooks in the CBSE and ICSE.
It's included, I heard.
Oh, yeah. It's included in the ICSE and CBSE textbooks from class 1 to class 8 by various publishers. And we've already gone into multiple million textbooks. And we've had some extremely good results with this, where children write to me on social media and they tell me that, I listened to the song and we've stopped using single-use plastics at home. And parents write to me and they tell me that, our children are constantly shaming us into action. And principals of schools constantly writing to me and telling me that, we had this open area and we were planning to build a building over there. The children protested against it, and they decided not to do it. And now when we give chocolates to our children and if it's in a plastic wrapper, they refuse to take it. So it was quite, it's quite amazing.
Fulfilling,
because the songs you learn during your childhood are songs you never forget. And if there are any morals in those songs, then the morals stick with you. And I wrote these songs mainly because I realized that the songs that children learn, like Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, does not teach you anything about stars. Baba Black Sheep teaches you nothing about sheep, and of course there are other problems associated with that song. But nevertheless, so I thought that why not change what children are learning when
Yeah.
it comes to their rhymes that they are learning in their adolescence. Yeah.
Wow, you're really making an impact. Huh? That's amazing. My favorite is one song in Mother Earth.
Yeah.
And I really like how you've used various instruments, and even there's rap going on in the middle, and it's very interesting, the whole thing. So, what can you talk to us a little more? How did this happen?
So Mother Earth is actually a very interesting song because that was actually created for a movie.
Okay.
It was created for this movie called as Wild Karnataka. So Wild Karnataka is a natural history documentary narrated by Sir David Attenborough. So Sir David Attenborough has been, of course, one of the greatest inspirations in my
Yes.
life, and every single conservationist or naturalist or environmentalist anywhere in the world, any corner of the world, will always tell you that they were first inspired by Sir David Attenborough. That's how big his footprint has been on the world of conservation. Now he's about 95 years old and still going strong. So we did this film when he was 92 years old. This film became the first ever natural history documentary to actually have a theatrical release in India. It was released across India. And the film of course, shows the pristine and beautiful environment of the Western Ghats and some of the most amazing, spectacular visuals.
Yes, I saw
And
that.
of course, I got to compose the music for it. So while composing the music for this film, I realized that there are no human beings shown in this movie. There are no human settlements. It's only pristine forests.
Yes.
So if you see an elephant in the frame or you see a tiger in the frame, how do you know that this is from India? It could be from Sumatra, it could be from Indonesia, it could be from Thailand, the tiger, or the elephant could be from Africa or anywhere else. How do you know that the snake is from India? It could be from any region of the world. So then I realized that that is where the music comes into play. So I realized that, all right, normally orchestral music is used. So I'll also use orchestral music, but at the same time, I'll have a very, very strong essence of Indian classical music.
Okay.
So I brought in obviously a flute player, singers,
Yeah.
Indian choirs, various Indian percussion instruments,
Yeah.
and I made the
There's
soundtrack.
matka also.
Yeah, the
think.
khadam. Yeah, I use the khadam also. So all of these instruments are used, and so that way, when you're looking at the elephant, because of the music being Indian, you immediately know, oh, this guy is
Yeah.
Indian, and then you look at a snake, you'll be like, oh, this is from India. So basically, subconsciously, the music is reminding you. And the second thing that I wanted to do through that music is that one thing that I have always disliked when it comes to popular media is that certain species of animals have always been vilified in popular media. Like, for example, Jaws. I love the movie, fantastic movie by Steven Spielberg. But after that movie released, sharks became one of the biggest villains in the whole ecosystem. When you think about a shark, you're immediately terrified. You want to kill the shark. That's all you want to do. And shark is basically a bad guy. Sharks are out to get you, but that's not true at all.
Yeah,
Sharks do
everyone's
not even
important.
consider human beings as being food. And in fact, sharks are so important for the ecosystem
Yes,
because
it
if
is.
sharks do not exist, the entire balance of the ecosystem of the oceans completely can collapse.
I agree.
And I can explain to you why, but it's a long story. But nevertheless, sharks are really important. If you look at Jungle Book, brilliant cartoon, brilliant movie, all of that stuff. But then the tiger is the villain in the movie, and it's an endangered species. And there's only one tiger in the forest, and the tiger is a bad guy. He's an evil person. And when Mowgli kills the tiger in the end, you're supposed to cheer for Mowgli. The tiger died. And that is so wrong. And spiders in various movies are vilified, that they are the villains. They are the bad guys. So that is what I do not want to do in this film. Like, for example, if a tiger is making a kill, then, if the tiger fails at the kill, then of course you have to celebrate, the deer, escaping.
Victory, yeah.
But at the same time, you have to feel sad for the tiger that the tiger is not going to get food for another 1 week.
Yeah.
So because that's the way of the jungle. So that is what I wanted to showcase, that no animal should have like a villain theme. No animal should be a bad guy. That is what I tried to do through the music. So coming to your question, Mother Earth, the song which appeared on Divine Tides, was basically an extraction of the music of Wild Karnataka, and I decorated it differently, and that became Mother Earth, and I absolutely love that piece of
Yeah,
music.
and very unusual how
Yeah.
your thought process is behind. It's amazing. So you also mentioned your inspirations are Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan and Peter Gabriel,
Yeah.
right? So what is so special about them?
So Ustad Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, I remember that when I was in, I think, the sixth standard in Bangalore, in Bishop Cotton's. During that time, the rich people in class had Walkman, right?
Yeah.
So I also had a Walkman that my father gifted me, like, so I used to listen to music all day long on that. And a couple of my friends also had a Walkman. And so then one friend of mine put a cassette into my Walkman and told me, listen to this piece of music. And this friend was much older. This friend was, I think, at that time in the 11th or 12th class. So he told me, listen to this. And it was a song called Tadim from this album of Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan that he did with Peter Gabriel and Michael Brooks. So it is an album called Night Song. So this Tadim song, it is about a 7 or 8 minute song. So I'm listening to it. And it is a very intense song. If you listen to it, you realize it's an extremely intense song. So I'm listening to it. Halfway through the song, I start getting tears rolling down my eyes. And I was not feeling sad. It was just that I was extremely overwhelmed by the music, that my body and my mind did not know how to react. So I was just getting tears. And I did not know what I was feeling, but I was feeling something very strong. Then after I finished listening to the song, again I rewound it and I played it again. And then I realized that, wow, music can have this huge, profound effect on somebody. Then I'm like, that is when I decided, even though I was already a musician by then, I decided that, that this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I want to have this effect on other people. That is what, because the beauty of the voice. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've always said this, that I believe that if God exists and if God has got a voice, then his voice would be like Ustad Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. That's how powerful it is. And then later on in my life, in my 11th and 12th, I heard of this band Junoon, a Pakistani band. And Junoon was very shocking to me because you had a vocalist who sounded a lot like Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, but at the same time there was an electric guitar and there was drums and there was a tabla and there was a bass player. Then I'm like, wow, what have they done to this music? They've made it modern and they made it appealing to younger people, and they're sort of expressing themselves through this amazing music. Yeah. And I thought that, that is when, and of course later on through my work with jingles and all of that stuff, I started realizing that music has no boundaries. You cannot pigeonhole music in your mind. Music can happen in any form or any shape. Yeah. And that is what my inspiration from Ustad Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan was.
Have you had the opportunity to meet him?
No, never.
Okay.
Then there was another song of his which also really captured me. It was there was this movie which had come out, an Oscar-winning movie, called Dead Man Walking. Mm-hmm. Susan Sarandon won the Oscar for Best Actress. It also had Sean Penn, directed by Tim Robbins. So that particular film was about a person, an inmate who was on death row. Mm-hmm. He was going to be given the death sentence for raping a bunch of people and all this stuff. He was a completely evil person, and Susan Sarandon plays a nun. And she's basically helping him out to gain spirituality in the last few days of his life, and also trying to see if she can stop him from getting the death sentence. So that is the whole thing. So there's a very weird relationship between both of them, not love or anything, but of understanding. And she knows that he's an evil person. So that there is some sort of a very vague understanding between them. The whole music, the entire film has got Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan's voice in it. Oh. And I was wondering that she's a Christian nun. So why did Tim Robbins, the director, decide to have Sufi music in the background? And I realized that is the beauty of it, because getting Ustad Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan's voice gave it that spiritual dimension that no other form of music could possibly give. So you're watching the film and you're not paying attention to the music, but still the music is hitting you subconsciously and it is having this very powerful, profound effect on you. So there is a song in the movie called The Face of Love. It is a collaboration between Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan and Eddie Vedder, the vocalist of this very famous band in America called Pearl Jam. So that was up until then, when you had an Indian musician and a Western musician collaborating, it is always like a little bit of tabla here and there, a little bit of a flavor of a sitar here and there and things like that. Just a flavoring of Indian music and not used in depth within the composition. But here you could see a proper 50-50% collaboration between a Western artist and an Indian artist, an Indian subcontinent artist and an Asian artist, where there was a mutual respect of both the art forms. And so then there you see that, all right, Asian art forms are coming of age now, where it's not used as a flavoring, but it is used as the soul of the composition itself. So that is why I love Ustad Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan.
You explained so well. It's amazing. Are there any jazz artists that you've been listening to lately?
Of course, I've always been a huge fan of Chick Corea. Chick Corea is said to be one of the greatest jazz pianists ever in the history of music. I've had the opportunity to meet him once, also interact with him a few times, and in fact, posthumously, after he passed on, this is about I think 4 years ago. After he passed on, his estate and his musician friends gave me a whole lot of his incomplete works, and I ended up producing an album creating all of that, called The Legend and I. So I had the opportunity to do all of that. But yeah, but he is an artist. Even after his death, he's got a huge influence on my work, and I love listening to him. I not a day goes by when I don't listen to a piece of music by him.
Nice. So you've composed songs on Gandhi, and you said that even you had you there was something on Mandela that you worked with
Yeah.
your friend with. So is there any other person you'd like to write about or compose a ballad or song on?
Actually, not sure. Actually, not anybody living right now.
Uh-huh.
But I guess yeah, there are so many figures in mythology, right?
Yeah.
Like I'd composed. I mean, of course, that some may say that he does not count because he's God. But on Lord Ram, I've composed pieces of music on
Yeah.
him. On Lord Krishna, on Shiva. On Lord Shiva, I've composed pieces of music. But I would say that even though they are God, they are also like the greatest personalities
Yeah.
who ever walked the planet. So I guess that also counts.
Yes. So one of the most inspiring things about your work is how alive you are to the musical moment. Now, did that openness translate to your life also?
It's difficult for me to say simply because for me, I do not have a separate life and a separate career.
Yeah.
Since the time I have been a musician, even during the time when I was in college, so I've been pretty much a professional musician since the age of 18, and a musician since I was maybe about 3 years old. But a professional musician, like I defined a professional musician as the first time I made some money, off
Yeah.
music. So that would be about 18. So since the time I was 18 till now, I feel that I've been on one very long holiday.
Okay.
Because a lot of people tell me that, oh, Ricky, you work so hard and you should take off for a couple of days. And then I'm like, I wouldn't know what to do on a holiday. I would probably carry my whole studio along with me and I would be making music over there. So, and of course I travel a lot because of my work. As we were discussing before recording this, that last year was about 17 countries.
Yes.
This year was about a little lesser than that, but more cities this year. So a lot more traveling, but lesser number of countries. So I'm constantly traveling. In fact, everybody, the CISF people in the Bangalore airport, they constantly laugh whenever I come to the airport when they see me because I'm there almost every day. So if I have to go on a holiday, again I have to travel for that. So again I have to pack my bags, and so that I do not like that at all. And even when I go on concerts, I don't visit the sites. My band usually goes out and they check out everything. I'm in New York about 6 or 7 times a year for concerts, and I've still not been to the Statue of Liberty. I've still not gone on top of the Empire State Building. I've not done any of the tourist stuff in New York or any other place which I've been to. So I just go there, sleep and get some rest, rehearse, do the concert, and I come back. So for me, life is basically my music and my career, and I don't see it any other way. And I'm really happy about that. Like for example, Mr. Narayan Murthy, he comes under so much of criticism about work-life balance and all of that stuff. But I understand where he's coming from, because he's a different breed, and I feel that I also come from that breed, where for me, I'm so passionate and so obsessed with what I do. So I do not even consider it work. So for me, there's no such thing as work-life balance. I just love what I do and I'm doing it. Like when I'm talking to you also now, when I'm talking to anybody, I'm constantly composing music while I'm talking, and I'm creating sort of like a background score. When I'm walking on the street, I'm walking in some sort of a rhythm, and in my mind, I'm thinking of like when I'm in a taxi and they put on the left and right indicator, you have that tuck 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 sound. Immediately, I start thinking of a rhythm on top of that. So that's how my life is.
So you say you travel a lot. Have you learned any learnings from your travel? Would you like to share any experiences that have remained as a very happy memory with you?
When you travel, of course, like you learn a lot from people.
Yeah.
And and their cultures. And what I try to do is that I try to take the best from
Yeah.
everybody, things that I feel apply to me. Uh, I believe that our Indian traditions are absolutely amazing when it comes to hospitality, when it comes to living your life, when it comes to treating other people, respecting elders. There are some stuff like, in Europe, which is also pretty good about,
Yeah.
about not having any kind of, any kind of job shame, and, and treating everybody as equal as possible, and things like that. So you learn that from them.
Yeah.
Then you also learn you learn about work ethics of different styles from different people, about how to work within teams. So I mean, I'm just rambling on, but what I'm
Yes.
trying to say is that I believe
learn
that
everything.
you learn from people, and you learn what not to do. Sometimes you learn what to do from people. And if you look at America right now, I've started realizing in the last 20 years that I've been traveling over there, and more increasingly, that loneliness is a huge issue over there. And people are just lonely over there. People do not have anybody to talk to. People do not have anybody to share their happiness with, their sadness with. And older people are completely forsaken over there. It's like they do not meet their children. Their children do not want to be in touch with them. They do not know what to do with their lives. So these are things that we should not incorporate into our society, and that's what I realize. That the family unit needs to stick around, and we should try our best not to move more into that direction when it comes to that. But of course, they've got a lot of things which work in that society, which we need to learn from. But
Yeah.
these are the few things that I feel
Not
that
to do.
we should not do that.
Yeah. So your songs in Divine Tides elevate senses into a realm of spiritual solitude where the soul is free. This is what you've said in one of your interviews. So do you often think of the fragile nature of life, mortality?
I guess here it's a question about spirituality, but
Yeah.
so for me, I myself, and full disclosure, I am a complete and absolute atheist.
Okay.
So I do not believe in any kind of God. I do not believe in any kind of spirituality. I do not believe in anything that I cannot explain. And if I cannot explain it, I just say I don't know. I don't know how this happened. I do not know what this happened. But I'm not going to attribute it to any kind of a spiritual being or any kind of a heavenly being or something like that. And I don't pray at all. So that, but of course, I lead my life by certain rules, and
Yeah.
those rules actually come from the Vedas and the Gita, because I believe that they are a very good way of running your life. And so I believe that I'm a philosophical and a cultural Hindu, but I'm not at all a religious Hindu in any way. But when it comes to spirituality, just what I mentioned about Ustad Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan,
Yes.
that sometimes what happens is that you hear a beautiful piece of music, like what I did when I listened to Tadim when I was in the 6th grade, or you watch a beautiful sunset, like a spectacular sunset on the ocean, and or you look at a beautiful child, like just being born, or something like uniquely like that, and then your mind is so primitive, because our human brains are at the end of the day primitive. So our minds are so primitive that we cannot understand or fathom the beauty of what we are looking at, or what we are listening to, or what we are watching. That that we immediately, what our brain does is that we attribute it to a higher being. That I had a spiritual moment. Like I saw God in the sunset, or I saw God in the baby's face, or or God was speaking to me through that music and things like that. So that, I believe, is a spiritual moment where you as an artist, you completely overwhelm the senses, or nature completely overwhelms the senses of a person, so much so that they just cannot understand what is going on.
Yeah.
So I've had that spiritual moment many times, and I have it very often. And if somebody tells me that my music sounds spiritual, then I feel that yes, I've succeeded.
It
So I've
is.
had that profound effect on
Yes,
them. Yeah.
it is. I think so, and it's very soulful. It's very, very beautiful.
Thank you.
So do you keep instruments near your bed in case inspiration strikes?
No, I keep my phone near my bed.
Okay.
So I can quickly hum something on it.
Yeah.
And my phone has got that piano app on
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So you can do. So technology has made things so
Yes,
much easier.
it has.
And of course, I travel with my studio setup everywhere I go, which is basically a simple thing. It's a laptop, and it's something like a interface called a sound card, a microphone, and a
Okay.
tiny keyboard,
Yeah.
like a musical keyboard, a tiny one, which everything fits into a laptop bag.
Yeah.
So I travel with that everywhere I go.
Okay.
And if I'm in the hotel, and and I've got a day free, then I'm just sitting and and making music in the hotel, resting, relaxing, and doing that.
Okay.
So So inspiration can strike anywhere, and I'm prepared for it.
Okay. And when did the big stage really happen? Was it in LA or where was it?
That, I guess, prior to, it's funny actually, but prior to the Grammy, I was barely doing any concerts in
Yeah.
India. So right up to 2000 and maybe 2010, 2012, when I was doing jingles
Yeah.
and I doing commercials, I was doing barely any concerts anywhere in the world. But whatever little concerts I was doing was outside of India. Because in India, my music wasn't appreciated much, even though it was very Indian in nature, because it wasn't film music. So there was no way to
Sad.
market it. Radio would not play it. Television would not play it. CD stores would not stock my CDs. So there was no way to reach out to an audience. Then what happened was that when I stopped doing commercials, then I got an opportunity to travel a lot more. So I started doing concerts everywhere in the world. And then my 16th album is what won me my first Grammy Award. After I won my first Grammy Award, some people in India got to know about me. And but then it was still not enough. The recognition that I got in India was still not enough for people to actually, pay me money to do concerts. And then what happened was that the actual defining moment happened is when I met Prime Minister Modi, and he actually tweeted about my music. That is what gave me recognition, even more than the Grammy Award. so then everybody in India got to know about who I was, and then his tweet and his Facebook post and all of that stuff became very popular.
Yeah.
And then later on, he tweeted again about me. So then that is what got everybody to recognize me, and then I started doing a lot of concerts in India, because that craving was always there.
Yeah.
That I want to do more and more concerts
Yeah.
in my own country. And if you look at all of these great classical musicians, all of them, they do most of their big concerts outside of India. So to answer your question, the big stages happen everywhere.
Okay.
But now I'm very fortunate that they're also happening in India.
Yeah.
Because in India, I performed about, my biggest audience ever in my life was actually in India. I did a concert at Visakhapatnam at RK Beach. It was for 88,000 people.
Wow.
So that's my largest concert anywhere in the world. And of course, in the range of about 20 to 30,000, I've done it in multiple countries all over the world. But I composed the music for the Cricket World Cup.
Okay.
So that happened in
2011.
2011.
Yeah.
So the opening ceremony happened in Dhaka in Bangladesh.
Yeah.
And India and Bangladesh and Sri Lanka co-hosted that ceremony.
Okay.
And so then the ICC requested me to compose music for that opening ceremony. So I composed 1 hour of music for the entire opening ceremony, for the laser show, for the dances, for the march past, for everything. And that was quite a unique experience, and it was quite amazing. And of course, because of my music, we ended up winning the World Cup that year.
My poor So you mentioned Prime Minister Modi.
Yeah.
How has your interaction with him been? And you've mentioned that he's also inspired you and influenced you a lot. Would you like to share some things about your experiences with him?
He's been a huge influence in my
Yeah.
life. The first time when I met him was in 2015, after I won my first Grammy. It was supposed to be a quick, 5-minute photo op.
Yeah.
And it ended up being almost an hour-long discussion.
Yeah.
Because he was going to be visiting the climate change conference in Paris, the COP21,
Yeah.
which is the largest conference of nations ever in the history of humankind.
Mm-hmm.
So he was going to be visiting that in a few months. So we were talking about that. He was telling me what he was going to be delivering in a speech, and and we were discussing about climate change and the environment and things like that. And then that is when he sort of, through that talk, he is the one who actually inspired me that I should stop all forms of commercial music and stop any other kind of music and focus on what I really want to communicate to the world, which is about the environment, because he saw the passion that I had about the environment. And I remember leaving his office that day and thinking that this is exactly what I'm going to do, because if the Prime Minister of your country gives you some advice, then you'll obviously take it seriously. So I did that. And then after that, multiple times, even for this album, Break of Dawn, I mentioned about the ancient Indian philosophy that, that the impurities of the environment is a direct reflection of the impurities of the mind, and in order to purify the environment, you have to first purify the mind. I first heard him say that. In 2015 itself, there was this event which was a Hindu-Buddhist conference called Samvad, which happened in New Delhi, and I was watching that conference, and he actually said this in his speech. Okay. And when he said this in his speech, I thought that, wow, this seems quite obvious, you know, that if you've got an imbalanced mind, then obviously everything around you is going to be imbalanced. Yeah. And I started studying it, and that's when I realized that he had quoted it from Hindu-Buddhist philosophy. And that is when I realized that, all right, that this is a very, very good direction for me to take my music in. And Break of Dawn was created out of that.
And would you like to share a little bit about your association with Stuart Copeland? And what have you learned from him? And what is your favorite song from the Police album?
So Stuart Copeland, I grew up listening to his music.
Yeah.
He's been a huge influence on my music itself. And in fact, when growing up, I had posters of him on my wall. Like, that is how obsessed I was with his drumming and his music. And during the pandemic, I wanted to start working on a piece of music that would be a follow-up to Winds of Samsara. So it was a 7-year gap between the albums. And I started creating few pieces of music, like 30-second, 40-second pieces of music, just like, small nascent stage of creating an album. And I quickly realized that I needed to have a very strong collaborator for this album, somebody who could really lead this album. So then I thought that why not get in touch with Stuart? And at that time, all of us were locked up in our homes because it was 2020 pandemic. So I got in touch with Stuart. Through a common friend, I got his email ID. I reached out to him and I sent him the music. And then I think a week or 2 weeks later, he reaches out again. And then we speak on the phone. And he told me, yes, let's work on this album. So we worked on the album for a year, became very, very close. So he became, pretty much like a father figure to me, another father figure to me. But of course, he would say older brother, but that's how it was. And we would joke about our age difference. Like he told me that, with the Police, we had come and performed in Mumbai. Did you come for that concert? Like a while back we had performed. Then I said, no. Then he's like, why? You're such a fan. Then I'm like, it was 3 months before I was born. So that was the kind of conversations we would have. And we worked on the album for a year. We finished off the album, released the album. Again, the album was very successful, but we had not even met each other in person. So that was the pandemic. So then the Grammys was happening on a certain date, and then he told me, why don't you fly in a week earlier and we can catch up in Nashville. He's got a concert over there. So I went to Nashville, met him and hugged him for the first time. And it was a beautiful moment for me. It was a very emotional moment for me. And then we ended up traveling to Las Vegas together for the Grammys. And then we won. Yeah. And that is also a beautiful moment when we won, because what happened was that the Grammys had told us that if your name is called out and you have to go on stage to collect the award, you've got exactly 45 seconds and only one person can speak. So if one person speaks for 15 seconds, the second person cannot take 30 seconds. They'll shut off your mic. So it's on one person and 45 seconds. So I told Stuart that you speak. Then he's like, no, you started the album, you speak. Then I told him, no, it's better that, you praise me rather than I praise myself. So a legend praising me. So he laughed. He said, okay, he'll speak. So he went up on stage. He spoke for about 10 seconds. And then he looks at me. And then I think he just has a change in his thoughts. He just looks at me and then he says that, no, but this album is all about Ricky. So I want Ricky to speak. And then it turns out that the person who plays you off stage, the conductor, who starts playing the music and the volume soars and your mic gets turned off. It turns out that Stuart knew that person. So Stuart looked at him and it's there on YouTube. You can see it. Stuart looks at him and he says, don't you dare. And then he tells me, Ricky, speak whatever you want to speak. And throughout the time, and I crossed 45 seconds. I went like over a minute. And while I was speaking, Stuart was constantly looking at him and he was like, don't start, don't interrupt him. So I finished off the speech and then we went. So that's the kind of person. And now I've just finished off my third album with him. Yeah. So we'll be releasing that album sometime in April or May.
So what is the biggest lesson you've learned from him?
I guess the biggest lesson I learned from him was how to lose control over your music. So he's a legend, he's considered to be the greatest drummer in the history of music. He's composed music for 50 Hollywood movie soundtracks, including Oscar-winning movie soundtracks. Yes. He's done operas, he's done orchestras, all of that stuff. So I realized that, for the first time in my life, I'm not going to be in control over my music because I'm working with an absolute legend. So I need to learn from this person. So I had made a decision that every time he tells me to do something or he does something on the album, which I feel is not going to work, I'm going to keep my mouth shut. And I'm just going to do exactly what he asks me to do. And I'm going to live with that for 2 weeks. And at the end of 2 weeks, if I still feel that this is not working, then I will voice my opinion. Okay. Until then, I will not voice my opinion. And there were so many times, there were 30, 40 times when he would do something and I would be like, that definitely is not going to work. That's not going to work for the album. I do not know why he did that or why is he asking me to do this and all of that stuff. I know what will work. and then I wait for 2 weeks. I do it, I wait for 2 weeks, and then I fall in love with it. And then I realize that, thank God, that figuratively, that, I did not listen to my own opinions. And then you start realizing that, you need to look at art from different perspectives at times. And sometimes you constantly fall in love with your own work.
Yeah.
And you cannot see anything else. You're completely blindfolded to what magic, your own composition can go to if you just have a different perspective. So that is one thing that I learned from him, to listen to people and to understand different perspectives for your music. So I believe that the album became such a beautiful album simply because that he was completely in control.
Yeah. And what's your favorite song from his album Police?
From the Police, of course, I think my favorite is Roxanne, because Roxanne's got a beautiful story behind it. And everybody likes Every Breath You Take. That's the most famous one. So Every Breath You Take also would be a favorite.
Yeah.
Message in a Bottle. Lots of them, actually.
Okay. You seem to be fit as a fiddle, right?
No, I'm not very fit, actually.
But you at least look that way. So how do you keep your body and mind together, working in unison?
No, I think there's a lot that I need to do. Because right now I do not work out at all. There was a time when I used to work out about 10 years ago because I had a personal trainer, and the personal trainer would come home. He had the fingerprint thing on my door, so he would enter my door. He would wake me up. He would force me to work out every day. So I believe that those 1-2 years that I had him, I thought that I was probably the healthiest.
Yeah.
During that time I was the fittest. But right now, not much. I think the only exercise I get is walking in airports. That's the only exercise. And I try not to take escalators, try to take stairs so to feel a little less guilty.
Do you count your steps?
Huh?
Do you count your steps?
I mean, the days when I'm traveling, I cross 15,000.
Okay.
But the days that I'm not traveling, it's 500, so
Okay.
that's how bad it is. So it's just walking around while I'm on the phone or something like that,
Yeah.
So that is something that I desperately need to work on. So
Okay.
I need to work on my health a lot. Yeah.
So there's a lot of sentiment in the song Mother Earth. Are you worried that we are past the point of no return in terms of climate change and global warming, and that technology and hyper-industrialization are going to work against human life on Earth?
I'm very optimistic about the Earth because this thing about going past no return or whatever, I don't think that is the right narrative to put out.
Okay.
Simply because when we talk about saving the planet, we're not talking about saving the planet because the planet will thrive without us,
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the planet will do very well without us. What we are talking about is that with global warming and with climate change is that we're working towards, towards creating an inhospitable environment for us human beings to survive in.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're doing is that we're driving ourselves to extinction. And so I believe that there is always enough time to turn around, but we need to turn around fast enough now, and we need to change our habits. And I believe everything will change if we have a ground up movement, because at the end of the day, politicians everywhere around us are failing us. Leaders and intergovernmental panels, everything is failing us simply because the way that democracy works is that that you're elected every 3, 4, 5 years, and so everybody needs to show instant gratification to their constituents within those 3, 4, 5 years. And any policies which involve the environment, which are long-term policies, will never survive because everybody just needs to get re-elected. So the only way people can survive is if they show short-term gratification through economics and through finances and through oil and things like that. So that is why I believe that what needs to happen is that there needs to be a change in mass consciousness when it comes to the people. It needs to be a ground-up movement where everybody needs to make tiny, small, incremental changes within their own lives. Because the problem with how we've been communicating climate change to everybody is that everybody feels that climate change is this huge phenomenon, and what can I do? This is something that the government has to do. This is something that politicians have to do. What can I do about it? Or even when it comes to something as small as plastics, they should be banning the plastics. Why should they ask me to stop using plastics? So everybody's putting the blame on somebody else when what we need to do is to take tiny incremental changes within our own lives. Not be hard on ourselves, but just whatever we can do within our own lives, do it. And also, I attribute this not to the fact that all of us are evil people. It's just that that we've been taught to believe that we are very insignificant. That if I stop using single-use plastics, what difference will it make? Or if I reduce my consumption of fossil fuels, what difference will it make? Or if I'm compassionate, what difference will it make? But it does make a difference.
Yeah.
All that we need to care about is not changing the world, but just changing our own habits. That's all we need to bother about. And if we do that, I think we'll be a far more conscious society. And I think all of these problems that we have will become problems of the past.
And do you incorporate it in your daily life also?
Yeah, so there are 4 things that I do in
Yeah.
particular in my life. One of them is that I don't subscribe to fast fashion.
Okay.
That is something that I follow very strictly. So this whole paradigm on Instagram that every single picture needs to have a different, costume, I don't subscribe to that. You look at the suit, you'll find it at least about 10 or 15 pictures on Instagram. In fact, for my concerts, I wear the exact same clothes for all my concerts. I had a cream sherwani last year, which I bought for the Grammys. I wore it at the Grammys, and after that, I wore it for over 70 concerts. Then I got a white suit. The white suit, I've been wearing it for about, I think, about 30, 35 concerts. So I wear the same thing, and it works out for me because fashion can be fashionable more than once. And the earth does not remember what we wore at the previous party, but the earth definitely remembers how we treat it. So I believe that we should, in public gatherings, we should rewear our clothes and double down on it. That I'm being responsible, and that's the reason why I'm doing it. Second thing is that I have a meat-free diet. So I'm an aspiring vegan, but I eat a meat-free diet right now and this is something that should not be forced on anybody because it's got a lot of cultural and traditional and even health ramifications. But people should read about why the meat industry is a polluting industry and why the meat industry contributes towards climate change and make your own decisions. The third thing is that I don't own a car. I use public transportation and I use taxis whenever I need to get to a place perfectly on time or if I need to go to multiple places in a single day. So I don't own a car. I used to own 3 cars up to 2013. Then I sold my cars and now I've decided that I don't need a car. So the part where my car used to be parked, that's become a garden. and now I just, because anyway, I'm traveling all the time. So when I'm traveling outside of Bangalore, if I have 3 cars in Bangalore, what use is that outside of Bangalore, So that's why I decided that what's the point of having a car? So I don't have that. And the last thing is that I get my carbon footprint audited every quarter. So there are lots of firms that do that in India and abroad, where they audit your carbon footprint right up to a micro level, right up to your ink usage. In my case, air travel, ground transportation, the lighting usage in concerts and generator usage and all of that stuff. And what we do is that we arrive at a figure every quarter, and then we have a meeting as to how do we reduce it for the next quarter. And then we mitigate the effects through tree plantations and investment in renewable energy companies. But in my case and in most people's cases, about 80% of the carbon footprint is air travel, unfortunately.
Wow, I'm in awe of what you do. If you could create a soundtrack for one place or event in history, what would it be and why?
Actually, there are quite a few of them. One, I would say, independence of India. I would say that moment, the whole Tristed with Destiny speech, if I could actually compose a piece of music for that particular event, that would have been absolutely amazing. Second thing would be maybe the fall of the Berlin Wall, because I think that was a very important part of our history. Because, of course, the World War II ending and all of that stuff. But in my opinion, the end of the World War was actually that Berlin Wall falling down. So if I could compose a piece of music. But the Scorpions did that. The Winds of Change was composed for that. I do not know whether I would have been able to better that. But nevertheless, that's a beautiful piece of music that I feel also showcases the power of music.
What's one piece of music or a project that you feel didn't get the attention it deserved?
I think every single one of them. Because I, as a musician, want my music to be heard further and wider.
Yeah.
So one can't complain, but as I said, because I make music for myself, so you can't complain that a wide audience is not listening to it. Because obviously, the kind of music that I make, it will never have the reach that a Bollywood film soundtrack would have. But at the same time,
but...
Yeah, but the thing is that one has to live with that, because I'm not creating music which is based on what the audience wants.
Mm-hmm.
I'm creating music based on what I want, So obviously that's not going to reach a wide audience. But at the same time, I wish it would. I wish my music would reach wider audiences.
Okay. The Grammys, Goodwill Ambassador for the UN, innumerable performance on world stage where audience have been left awestruck by your work. What do some of these accolades mean to you?
So I think every accolade and every award can be taken in 2 ways. One is, vanity, that, yeah, I won this award and
Yeah.
I'm better than everybody else, which
Yeah.
is the wrong way of taking an
Yeah.
award, because that assumes that the award is the end goal.
Mhm.
Whereas for me, the way that I look at awards is that awards needs to be the beginning of something. So, especially since my music is always about some kind of a social cause or an environmental cause, I believe that every single award that I get is a platform for me to reach a further and wider audience, not just with my music, but also, with the message. So that is why I feel that a lot of people say that, oh, I don't like awards and all of that stuff. And I agree with them to an extent where your music and your art should be completely uncompromised, where you should not be doing it for awards. Do it for yourself. But then after that, when you finish off the project and you get into the marketing stage and you win awards, then you should absolutely appreciate awards, because awards helps you reach a wider audience.
So, as an ambassador for the UN, whether it's UNSHR or UNCCD, you meet a lot of people, host of people. How has this exposure to this diverse multicultural group shaped you as a musician?
No, I guess that has shaped me as a musician a lot, because again, like, everything is about perspectives. Like, even if you look at climate change, you look at species, you look at the refugee crisis, there are multiple perspectives for everything.
Yeah.
Some people may say it is wrong, some people may say it's right, some people may say it is ethical, some people may say it's not ethical. So there are different perspectives, and almost every perspective actually is right, because when you're listening to somebody say something which is against a topic, you're absolutely convinced by them, and you listen to somebody else and you're absolutely convinced by them. So then, for me, the thoughts that I have in my mind are formulated by all of these conversations. So I try to talk to as many people as I can. I try to learn from every single person and show empathy towards them. And I try not to argue with somebody, because I do not try to have a strong viewpoint myself when I'm talking to somebody. And I don't try to argue with them, because if you argue with somebody, no matter how much you may feel intrinsically that they are wrong, if you argue with them, then you are never going to be able to listen to their viewpoint. So that is why I try not to argue with everybody, show empathy, try to be on their side, and try to get as much information as possible, and then make my own decisions when I make my music. But my music itself, I try not to get political. Like, for example, if you look at climate change is looked upon as a science in most of the world. But if you look at only America, climate change is looked upon as something that you can believe in or you don't believe in. Like, people say, I believe in climate change, or I don't believe in climate change. So the knee-jerk reaction is that it's not up to you to believe in it. It's a science and it's a scientific consensus. It is happening all around us. But then the way to do it is that, try to figure out why is it that they do not believe in it. And then you will realize that it is some kind of a political reason why they do not believe in it. Or it has to do with jobs, or maybe it has to do with religion. It has to do with how they've been taught that their religion defines how the world was made, and why the world was made, and why the world was created. So basically that you just have to learn everybody's perspectives and then make decisions yourself.
But what really triggered the climate change activist in you?
Again, as I said, I've always been an environmentalist my whole life. And I believe that climate change would be the sum total of all the environmental problems that we face. Like, species are going extinct, that is leading to climate change. Deforestation, leading to climate change. Air pollution, leading to climate change. Oceans are getting polluted, leading to climate change. So climate change is almost like an umbrella phenomenon that is the end result, which means that we human beings will not be able to survive on this planet, which sort of, like, as I told, is the sum total of all the environmental issues. Now, for me, one major moment which made me realize the actual ground realities of climate change was that, at the Paris Climate Change Conference, where I mentioned that Prime Minister Modi had gone. So Prime Minister Modi had released an album of mine over there, an album called Shanti Samsara, along with the then French President, François Hollande. And so I was very intently watching the climate change conference. And there was one main plenary hall where during the 8-9 days of the climate change conference, every single world leader went up on that stage and gave like a 10-minute speech talking about what their commitments are to the environment and what they feel needs to happen. So beautiful speeches by all the governments. Prime Minister Modi gave a beautiful speech on climate justice over there. But one world leader who caught my attention was President Anote Tong of the island nation of Kiribati, a Pacific island nation. So Anote Tong, he went up on stage and he gave a 30-second speech. He said, all you 195 countries present here, please pass a resolution that ensures that my people of Kiribati stay above the water. Now, that was a very powerful statement. And I studied about Kiribati. I realized that 21 inhabited islands.
Did you visit Kiribati?
Yeah, that's what. I'll come to that. So, 21 inhabited islands, very low-lying atoll islands. And it is said that they're going to be the first country in the world that's going to go completely underwater due to climate change. So, in our lifetime, the tallest point in any of the islands is going to be underwater. So we're going to have to redo our maps and our globes, and we're going to have to paint the part where Kiribati is in blue because they're going to disappear. So I went to Kiribati, as you mentioned, and spent about 3 weeks over there. Spent a lot of time with their president, spent a lot of time with their people. And I realized that it's a country that has not contributed to climate change at all. They do not have any industrialization, no pollution. They're a very primitive society. And yet they are suffering the consequences of climate change. And that's the problem and in fact, the president was telling me that when you people, like, developing nations and developed nations have a hurricane or a cyclone, water enters your home, right? And water enters your home, and after some time it recedes. But he's like, in our case, with climate change, water keeps entering our home till the time that our homes become part of the ocean bed, and it is completely gone. And it's finished. Your ancestral land that you've had for centuries and millennia, that's completely gone. So that is when I realized that climate change is not a vague phenomenon that may or may not happen in the future. There are current victims of climate change, people who are currently suffering. And our actions, sitting down over here, are having disastrous consequences on people on the other side of the world. Because if all of us countries could build domes around our borders and keep our pollution and carbon emission within our own borders, then countries like Kiribati have nothing to worry about. But then the problem is that it's one atmosphere, a really thin one. Our carbon emission and pollution goes everywhere in the world. As we all know, global temperatures rise, polar ice caps melt, ocean levels rise. And since they are the lowest lying islands, they are suffering the consequences of our actions.
Yeah, that's really sad. So this is near Australia, the place?
Yeah, it's near Fiji, actually. Yeah. So if you look at the globe, of the planet Earth, you will see North America, South America. You move a little bit, you'll see Africa and Europe. You move a little bit, you'll see India, Russia, China. You move a little bit. What most people don't show is that there is one point where the entire circle is blue. Okay, that's the Pacific Ocean. The entire circle is blue. No land is seen at all. Yeah. Right in the middle of that is Kiribati.
Oh, because I was trying to Google and see where is Kiribati.
And it is on the international date line, and it is on the equator. So it's the only country in the world that has got land mass on all 4 quadrants of the planet. So they bring in the sunrise every morning, and they bring in the New Year's every year. So they are geographically very significant.
Yeah. So last year you had the honor to conduct the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra. Can you describe the feeling as the ensemble performed our national anthem, and what made it so special?
So the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, I've collaborated with them multiple times in the past, and they are my favorite orchestra in the whole world. Unfortunately, in India, we do not have a symphony orchestra. So that is why I constantly keep going to the Royal Philharmonic. And of course, I've worked with symphony orchestras all over the world. But the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, I really like them a lot. I think they're absolutely amazing. So last year, I wanted to do a version of the Indian National Anthem with a symphony orchestra. And the reason for this is that if you look at an orchestra has got various instruments. Like, for example, you've got a violin, which is a soft instrument. Then you've got a tuba, which is a loud instrument. Then you've got a harp, soft instrument. You've got a timpani, which is like a loud instrument. So all these instruments, they've got their own unique personality. They've got their own unique identity. A violin is not trying to be a tuba. A tuba is not trying to be a harp. A harp is not trying to be a bassoon. But yet, when all of them play together, they play together beautifully, harmoniously as one unit.
Yeah.
And that, to me, every time I look at a symphony orchestra playing, I feel that is what is representative of India. That India has got different religions, cultures, traditions, culinary tastes, skin colors, all of that stuff, different ethnicities. But yet, somehow the whole thing works. So it's not that everybody needs to become the same or uniform. Yeah. Not everybody has to have the same political ideology. Everybody can have their own ideology, but at the same time work harmoniously as one in a state of no fighting and in a state of no war and no contradictions with each other. So that is what I loved about the orchestra. So I wanted to record the national anthem with an orchestra. I went to the Royal Philharmonic, told them that, can you get me 100 musicians? So they said, yeah, we'd love to. And I contacted Abbey Road Studios because I record there very often. So Abbey Road also was quite excited because they've not recorded 100 musicians in the studio for decades, So they were also quite excited. And then while I was conducting the orchestra, when I started the conducting, I realized there was a lot of subtext, and I spoke to the orchestra about it. I told them that, that after you guys have ruled us for over 200 years, it's nice that an Indian composer is conducting you performing the Indian national anthem. And of course, all of them laughed. But I could see, because I've collaborated with them in the past, I could see that all of them gave it their very, very best after I told them this,
How nice.
and they really wanted it to be the best version of themselves, and that's what. And then the video, we released it on the 15th of August. I recorded it, I think, about 5 days or 6 days before the Independence Day, because that is the only time I could get all 100 musicians into the studio. And Prime Minister Modi also tweeted it, and he said that it should make every Indian proud, and
Yeah.
so many people, and it went completely viral, and that was a beautiful experience that I had.
No, it's amazing. And there was something I saw that there were 14,000 children.
Yeah, that was this year.
Okay.
So this year I thought that let me add on to the orchestra. So I took the orchestral recording, and what I did was that I got 14,000 tribal students in Bhubaneswar.
Okay.
There is this beautiful institute over there called the Kalinga Institute of Social Sciences, where at any given point in time, 40,000 tribal students are clothed, fed, educated, taken care of, boarded, lodged, completely free of cost. So I got in touch with them, and then we identified 14,000 children who are good singers and who are interested. So we got them, and that became a Guinness record for the largest music lesson. And then we got the most legendary Indian classical musicians like Pandit Hariprasad Chaurasia, Rakesh Chaurasia, Aman Anayan, Rahul Sharma, Sheikh Mehboob, Khalisabi Mehboob on Nadaswaram, Giridhar Udupan, Ghatam, Rahul Sharma on Santur, Jayanti Kumresh on violin, Veena, sorry. We got all of them together. So it was 3 layers. One is the orchestra, second is the 14,000 children, and then we had all the amazing Indian classical musicians. And we released that this year. And this year also it went completely all over the place. So very, very happy about that. And I love the Indian national anthem. It's that one piece of music that brings the whole country together.
Yeah.
So I want to constantly keep making these different versions of the national anthem to inspire love for our country.
Yeah. No, and I had goosebumps when I heard this. It was beautiful. You also teach as a professor at National Institute of Advanced Science?
So the National Institute of Advanced Studies, it's part of the Indian Institute of Science. So I do not teach actively, but I am an adjunct professor with them.
Okay.
I once in a while I used to, but now I'm not that active. I used to talk about science communication.
Okay.
So that's a wonderful story, because they used to have a director called Professor Baldev, Professor Baldev Raj, who used to be the head of the Bhabha Atomic Research Center. Not Bhabha Atomic, Indira Gandhi Atomic Research Center. So very decorated scientist and amazing nuclear scientist, atomic scientist. And he had come to a few of my concerts where I was performing music on climate change and about all these topics that I mentioned about social impact. So he just spoke to me, and he told me that what you're doing is effectively science communication. And we had a discussion about this, that scientists are really good at figuring out what the problems of our planet are and figuring out solutions for it. But they are not so good at communicating it, and that is why, how do you inspire change when scientists are the ones who are communicating? So what needs to happen is that scientists need to constantly collaborate with artists and with communicators and storytellers, so that we take these complex ideas and thoughts that the scientists have, and we communicate it through an emotional language and a more easier language for people to understand. And if you communicate it through an emotional language like music, then people are more likely to change their behaviors.
More open also.
So I really liked that idea and this discussion that we had. So then he made me a professor at the institute, and we were very active. Unfortunately, he passed away about 3 years ago. And since then, I've been trying to be as active as possible, because the new director, Dr. Shailesh Nayak, an absolutely wonderful gentleman. So I've been trying to do it, but because of my work schedule, it's becoming difficult. But that is something that is very near and dear to me.
So you also composed a song on the river Ganges in a very spiritual way. There is this theory called blue minds. Have you heard of it?
No.
So which believes that living near water is a health curative. So do you have any retirement plan around this idea?
No, that even though I did not know about blue mind, but it's quite obvious about it. But it depends upon how clean the water is also. Like if you're living in Flint in Michigan, where the water is filled with lead poisoning, then that's not a very good thing. or there is so much of industrial waste from General Motors entering the water, then that's the thing. But nevertheless, I love the water. I love being near the water, and I love the time that I get to spend, on a riverbank or, on the shores of an ocean.
Yeah, because the sound of water is so calming, right?
Yeah, but that's the thing, and that's the beauty of the sound of forest and water. I've always felt that no matter how good our recording technology is, if you go into a forest and you in the night, let's say, and you're hearing these cricket sounds, it sounds soothing when you're in the forest. But try recording it and listening to it at home. It's going to sound like absolute cacophony. I do not know what it is or how it is described. Maybe it's the air of the forest also that has to do with the resonance of the sound, or or just being in the presence of the crickets, or or that acoustic environment or recording technology, somehow messes up with the sound. Nobody knows that, and that's the reason why a lot of people ask me that why don't you add sounds of the rivers and sounds of the ocean and sounds of the forest into your music. And I say no, I'm not going to do that, because for me, I prefer interpreting the sounds through musical instruments. It's just like if I were to take, and I say this a lot, that just like if I were to take a photograph of you, then based on the lighting conditions, I'll get a verbatim image of that microsecond on that moment, and that will be on a photographic plate. But if I were to make a painting of you, then I would talk to you a little bit. I would get a little bit of your personality into the painting, and it would be a little more artistic. It would be a little more interpretive about who you are as a person. So it's the same thing when it comes to the forest sounds. That I believe that rather than just recording the sounds of the forest or a sound of a bird, I would rather take a bansuri or a sitar and try to interpret those sounds through music. And Beethoven was very famous for doing that. Beethoven, the composer, the German composer, Austrian German composer. So he, while he was alive, it has been recorded in various different texts, that what he used to do is that he used to go into nature, he used to listen to the sounds of nature, and he used to interpret that on a sheet of paper, like through his scores, through his orchestral scores. In fact, he's got one particular symphony known as the Pastoral Symphony, which is widely said that it basically is very representative of nature, not only the beauty of nature, but the chaotic nature of nature, the chaotic feeling of nature. So that is my favorite symphony. In fact, in Divine Tides, the Grammy Award-winning album with Stuart Copeland, there's a song called Pastoral India, where I've taken one of the main pieces from the Pastoral Symphony and I've made it Indian, So that's what I've done. So he's been a huge inspiration, Beethoven.
Nice. So what's your message to someone who wants to take the plunge into music as a career?
It's so basically, I would say that first figure out whether you want to be a mainstream musician and you want to do music as a job. And there are people who are very good at that, who, you get a brief from, let's say, a director or an actor or a producer, and you make music based on that. So that is one thing, and you can become very popular and you can make a lot of money. Or you want to make music as an extension of yourself, and you want to create music which is celebrating certain things that you find worth celebrating, or talking about issues that you feel you want to communicate to people. But most importantly, I feel for Indian musicians, there's this huge misconception that in order to get acclaim all over the world, you have to create music in English, or you have to create music which is like Western forms of pop music or hip hop music and things like that, which is not true, because the only musicians in India who have actually gotten acclaim all over the world are the classical musicians and the folk musicians, like Pandit Ravi Shankar, Pandit Hariprasad Chaurasia, Ustad Ali Akbar Khan, Anushka. You have Pandit Vishwamohan Bhatt, all of them, even me, all
Zakir
of them.
Hussain,
Ustad Zakir Hussain. So all of them are the ones who have gotten recognition because they have dug deep into their roots and they figure out what is it that makes them uniquely Indian, and they create music based on that. And they've broken cultural barriers where they've reached out to people all over the world. So I think that would be really important, to figure out what kind of a musician you want to be, and then figure out how you're going to go about that.
Yeah. So what is the most unusual or surprising feedback that you've got for your music?
Unusual feedback.
Yeah.
I think the unusual feedback only came during the time when I was doing jingles.
Okay.
So that is what, like we would have all sorts of clients, like one client came to me and said that, you know what this music reminds me of? It reminds me of a tube light blended with the piano. And then I'm like, what does that even mean? Or very, very vague ideas, like for example, once I was doing a jingle for, I did a jingle for Hayward's 2000 and, the beer. And it was quite successful. It did quite well. And then after that, the other brand, Hayward's 5000, came to me. So I'm like, okay, what's the brief? How do you want the jingle to be? And then they said that, see, Hayward's 2000, if a person wants to get really drunk, because I've never sipped alcohol in my life, so for me, alcohol is like a vague phenomenon. So the thing is, that he's like, if a person wants to get drunk on Hayward's 2000, then they probably need to drink about 6 or 7 pints, But with Hayward's 5000, with half a pint, they get completely drunk. So that was your jingle for Hayward's 2000. Now you have to make a jingle for Hayward's 5000.
That's funny.
So that is what. So those days were fun in their own way. But now I'm very happy doing what I'm doing.
So what inspires you outside of music? Any favorite film, art forms that has left a mark on this creativity?
Not in creativity, but I love watching movies.
Yeah.
I watch a lot of movies and all kinds of movies, whether it is mainstream Bollywood movies to mainstream Hollywood action movies to various cinema from around the world and art
Netflix?
cinema.
Netflix?
Netflix and shows and everything. I watch tons and tons of stuff. And I love sitcoms also. I've pretty much watched every single sitcom that is out there. So I like watching a ton of things. Whether that inspires me in my music or not, that I'm not sure of. But it does inspire my thought process sometimes. I watch a lot of documentaries also for the same reason. But I guess my greatest inspiration is nature. Going out in nature and and spending time in nature. I think that is what my greatest inspiration is.
So what's your favorite movie latest in the new lately?
I think in Indian cinema, I really liked that movie which Nandita Das made called Zwikato.
Okay.
I watched it on Prime, and I thought it was a beautiful film. It had Kapil Sharma as the lead actor. I thought he did a fabulous job of being so understated in the movie, because you would imagine that Kapil Sharma would be over the top, but really, really well done. And Suhana Goswami, the actress, she also did a fabulous job. So I really like that movie in Indian movies. And in Western movies, which ones did I like? I think the last one that I really liked was Oppenheimer. And there were a few which are not coming to my mind, but I think there were a few others also that I really liked. Yeah.
So what's one dream project or collaboration you've never spoken about but you would love to work on someday?
I think if you look at Indian singers, I think I would love to work with Arijit Singh actually, because I think Arijit Singh is one of those few singers who was completely mainstream, but he stood the test of time, and also very, very versatile and a fantastic vocalist. Of course, Sonu Nigam is my all-time favorite, and he's also, I'm very fortunate to say, he's a good friend now. And we interact with each other on Instagram. At least once a week we interact with each other. So he's a great, great human being. So I like him. And of course, Shankar Mahadevan. I think one of the greatest singers that India has ever seen. One of the most versatile too. I've gotten to collaborate with him multiple times.
That's what I was going to say.
So he's amazing. So I guess the person who I've not collaborated with is Arijit Singh. Would love to collaborate with him.
A.R. Rahman?
A.R. Rahman again is a friend, and I do not want to force him to collaborate with me, even though I would love to. We talk to each other also. We keep in touch quite often. I also keep in touch with both his children. I mean, all three. I mean, two of his children. 2 out of 3 of his children. So basically, that Amin and and Khatija. Khatija especially, she's an amazing girl, and also has the fire in her for doing something for humanity, and she also handles A.R. Rahman's charity. Amazing girl. Her sister, I've never met her, so I do not know, but Amin is also a great boy. So so the thing is that, coming back to A.R. Rahman, I would absolutely love to collaborate with him one day, but I'm hoping that happens organically.
So we just do a quick rapid fire round.
Sure.
Who's your favorite musician?
Favorite musician, Peter Gabriel.
And comfort food?
Pizza.
Your ideal time at day or night to compose music?
There's no such thing for me.
Okay. Western or Hindustani classical music to unwind?
Definitely Indian classical, yeah.
Okay. Last one, if not a musician, what else would you be?
Nothing. That's the only thing that I know how to do.
Not a dentist?
No, definitely not. Because there was never any intention to practice. And even while studying dentistry, I was just studying enough to pass the exams, I was not interested in becoming a dentist. Even though I think it's a great profession, but the thing is that it was not a profession for me.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming and for
Thank
being
you.
here. I think you're a wonderful human being.
Oh,
There's
thank you
so
so
much
much.
I've
So are
learned
you.
from you, and thanks a lot for your time today.
Thank you so much for this.